Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Robert Phoenix, broadcasting to you live from the new 8 o'clock time slot here. I'm now competing with David Knight. I like David Knight. David Knight is I think Alex Jones just keeps David Knight around just for some kind of, I don't know, moral ballast. You know, David Knight he's like the guy you wake up to, and he's not as crazy. And look, Alex Jones, for all of his bullshit, right, is still kind of charismatic, and he's actually pretty brilliant. I'm gonna tip my cap to Alex and his brilliance, but he's not doing a good job on this Florida shooting. Nobody's doing a good job on this Florida shooting at InfoWars. Why is that? Why are they peddling the Nicholas Cruz as the shooter narrative? Why are they doing this? You know, I watch InfoWars to see how they spin things. And they're in a huge spin cycle over at InfoWars. I watched Owen Schroyer yesterday go on and on and on about Nicholas Cruz and SSRIs and gun rights and all this garbage. Nicholas Cruz didn't kill anybody in Parkland, Florida. I'm going to read you some stuff today from a piece that was put out by Yoichi Shiamatsu. Does a lot of writing for Jeff Rense. I think he's exclusive for Rense. I don't always agree with everything he says, but that's kind of par for the course in today's day and age, right? Nobody agrees with everything I say. You shouldn't. You shouldn't agree with everything I say. Find your own peace. You should do your own investigating. Take what I share with you with a couple of grains of salt. There might be some things in here that you might find interesting. You may find some things that you disagree with, and that's okay. That is okay. In a world where we're being literally forced to agree with a certain type of programming and a certain type of mind-controlled pablum behavior, political speech, politically correct speech, just fill in the blanks. We need to be able to disagree. We need to be able to look at something and say, this is not a fit, this doesn't work, and here's why it doesn't work for me. And anybody can do it. But to shout it down and to shut it down is, I think, extremely dangerous. Extremely dangerous. We have to have an open exchange of ideas. Where it gets really difficult is when we get into a situation like what happened in Florida on Valentine's Day. The new Valentine's Day massacre. And the reason why it gets difficult is because there's only one narrative that you can agree to when it comes to the popular culture, right? There's one narrative, and one narrative is Nicholas Cruz went in there and he cold-bloodedly shot everybody down and then nonchalantly went over to the subway and had himself a nice soda on his way to go get a burger and another soda. Did you know that Nicholas Cruz is worth $800,000? I didn't, but we're going to find out a little bit more about Nicholas Cruz through Yoichi Shiamatsu. He's a good researcher in his stellar work. The thing I don't agree with him is that he still thinks that Adam Lanza did Sandy Hook. and I don't even believe there's an Adam Lanza. I think it's his brother, and in a kind of a composite of his brother. Oh yeah, Sandy Hook. When we think about these things, Sandy Hook certainly comes to mind. Anyway, we're going to find out more about Nicholas Cruz with this piece. But getting back to InfoWars, they're not even exploring the fact. They're not even getting into the fact that, well, there were drills going on. There were fire drills. There were all kinds of interesting little escapades that were taking place. They're not really getting into that too much. I think Alex doesn't want to get burned. Either that or his pals at Stratford give him his talking points. The other thing that they're not talking about is the fact that in multiple shooters, they ran that video of Baby Meadnick. Baby Meadnick. Alexa Meadnick. They ran that video of the multiple shooters. Gone. They're not even going down that path. Now, I happen to know somebody who is connected to parents in Parkland, Broward County, Florida. By the way, that's the domain of Debbie Wasserman Schultz. How was this woman still holding down a congressional seat? What is happening with the Iran investigations? You know, these are the things that drive Americans fucking crazy. Okay? Maybe that's the point of it. It's just to drive us crazy. You know, they've got the Iwan's laptop. They know what happened. They know what was going on. The Iwans were working likely for Israeli intelligence. Yeah, through Debbie Wasserman Schultz. That's what I think. And spying on every single congressional person they can get their hands on through their laptops. And the Iwans didn't know shit about computers. The Iwans were like low-level Pakistani gangsters, right? That's what they were. Low-level Pakistani gangsters. They had to outsource the computer stuff to some teenager who didn't want to do it, but he did it anyway. And it was all just about getting access to those computers, backdooring them and ferreting out information, some of which they could use for bribery and extortion, others that they would find some other use or advantage for. We live in a world that is literally laced with espionage and trying to gain kind of an inside angle on what people are doing, saying, thinking, what they will do, say, or think, and using it against them in most cases. Where we don't have great espionage are in events like Parkland, Florida. And it's very difficult because we have this pastiche of bits and pieces that we're trying to, it's almost like it's a shattered mirror. And we're trying to put these pieces back together on the mirror so we can get some kind of reflection from what actually occurred. So what are we left with? We're left with very strange images of cops standing around doing nothing. We're left with videotapes of kids who display absolutely zero emotion, and if any emotion is shown, it's uncomfortable laughter and smirking. We're left with video footage of young girls, Baby Meatnick and the other one whose name I don't know, talked about 2 shooters, 3 shooters, and very calmly, very matter-of-factly, we're left with this. We're left with a whole series of pieces that don't fit. And yet, with my connection down in that area, there is a very clear indication that there were people that died. If everybody says that nobody died, they're wrong. Now, are there kids who have been pulled out, who are part of an inside group? Quite possibly. And are they the ones that are being asked to do the interviews versus other kids? Absolutely. So 2 things don't have to be mutually exclusive. Both things can be true, right? We could have a situation where people have died, and according to my inside source, who knows a parent of a child that died, yes, that is the case. This is somebody I know and trust, okay? She also told me that she's been on the parents' message boards, and the parents are talking about multiple shooters. And we're not talking about Nicholas Cruz's brother who has been snatched up. And by the way, Nicholas Cruz's brother is not his biological brother. Keep that in mind as well. So we're into some interesting territory here. Both things can be equally true, which is difficult, right? Because we've gotten to this point, well, it's either fake or it's real. And I don't think it's that cut and dry. And I do think that the kids that we're seeing the interviews with have been chosen, picked, groomed. And these are the kids that are now being mobilized to push the new gun control. They're tugging at our heartstrings now. And this is going to be the equivalent of a children's crusade. Now remember, we have Pluto and Sagittarius kids that are now coming onto the scene. These are not millennials. They're not millennials, and they will be ideologically driven. Unlike the Pluto and Scorpio generation, who are maybe anti-ideologically driven to some extent, this is going to be a different generation. They'll be inflamed. They'll be inspired. You will see great exhortations of Sagittarian projections of truth, and that may or may not be true, or may not be the case. But it might feel good in the moment. It might feel right in the moment, because you know that's how Sagittarius works. And then Sagittarius often will have to backtrack and say, well, you know, I might have been wrong there, but I was right here. And we love Sagittarius. I've got Jupiter and Sagittarius in my first house. I've learned to love it. It's not always, sometimes it's a bit much for people. Anyway, so this is what we're dealing with now in this situation. And there are parents on that message board talking about multiple shooters. Wow, how about that? Isn't that interesting? So what we're going to do today is I'm going to get into this piece by Yoichi Shimatsu. And then I'm going to try to make some parallels to what happened during the Bolshevik Revolution. And I believe that this is basically who we're dealing with. We're dealing with maybe third or fourth generation Bolsheviks. And politically, ideologically, culturally, I think this is what we're dealing with. We're looking at a new version of the Bolshevik Revolution, which I've talked about in the past. You know, last year, 2017, was the 100th anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution, and I believe that's when it began in earnest. In the revolution, the revolt against the United States of America and the people therein. And I'm not being, Joe Patriot. I can just see what's happening. I mean, the Russians weren't when it happened, the Russians weren't the United States. They were Russia. They were a monarchy. They theoretically were not a monarchy, but tell that to King Donald. Now, or King Barack. How about that? Now that was a monarchy, absolutely. And to some extent, I think Trump sees himself as the king. You go to his place in Trump Tower, and it's a solar temple, is what it is. Okay, so I'm going to read this piece by Shimatsu, and I may not read it in whole. It's a very long piece. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll read it to you. Come on, boys and girls. Sit on down. It's story time. Get your pillows and blankies. Okay. God, that was kind of creepy, wasn't it? Yikes. You never know what's going to come out sometimes. By the way, I saw a really fascinating video on Jim Carrey yesterday. And it was a really interesting video. Before I get to this piece, it was an interesting video because the person who put the video up was trying to show that Jim Carrey, this was like a born-again, Christian sort of person, was an evil Satanist. And by the time you're done watching the video, it's like, the guy's kind of making some sense here. when I get where they're coming from, but I was looking at his chart. He has Neptune right on his ascendant. Right on his ascendant. And you can see that Neptunian kind of bandwidth because he shows up at on a talk show, late night talk show. I don't know who it was, Arsenio Hall or something. Who knows? Probably about 10 years ago. And he shows up and he's dressed as Satan. And he's got horns coming out of his head. And man, he's digging it. You can just tell he's totally digging it. He's doing the Illuminati tongue job on Jimmy Kimmel. And that's not too long ago. And now he's like, painting and talking about Jesus and how Jesus is electric. And he's talking about how, there is no meaning. There is no meaning to anything. That we're just electrons showing up in a particular pattern, in a particular time, and we assign meaning to everything. He's a really bright guy. But you can see the bandwidth there with showing up and stomping around as Satan and then doing the Jesus paintings. Absolutely fascinating. It was just a kind of an interesting exercise in Neptune on the ascendant. All right, let's get into this. Florida school attack exposes pedophile Jewish vigilantes. Whoa! What a headline. Americans need to expose and fight political criminals who are causing violence against children. Okay, before I get into this, well, maybe I'll just wait. Because I have opinions about what's going on and what I think needs to happen. Excuse me. But I'm going to read you this. Yoichi Shimatsu, this is from yesterday, 2/19/18. He's going to start with a quote from Revelations here. And I looked and beheld a pale horse, and the one thing sitting on it, the name of him is Death, and Hades was following him, and authority was given to them over a fourth of the earth, Revelations 6:8. Before delving into the sordid details, it should be noted in the morning of the same Valentine's Day massacre, the 3 young men in a truck drove without a permit onto the grounds of NASA headquarters at Fort Meade, Maryland. Security opened fire on the wheels and apparently one serviceman was hit by a ricocheting bullet. The young men were found to be high on drugs and claimed they took the wrong turnoff from the adjoining road. The Pentagon and the White House were put on a terrorist alert, and obviously the NSA suffered momentary confusion, since the truck could well have been mistaken for a suicidal bomb attack. Whether that driving violation was part of a deliberate attempt to throw the nation's law enforcement off guard is yet to be determined. Further south, all hell did break loose on St. Valentine's Day, a Christian holy day dedicated to genuine love and innocent affection. Well, it's also a pagan holiday. He kind of left that part out, where people run around in wolf masks and screw each other. Then again, heartfelt love is in rare commodity amid the corruption. You got to get a little editor here. Is a rare commodity amid the corruption of South Florida. Broward County, scene of the Parkland school massacre, is known for its Fort Lauderdale casual flings during college days on Easter weekend. Can anyone recall what that holy day stands for? By the way, Apple has taken out Ash Wednesday or Good Friday. They've taken out Good Friday and Easter now from their phones. So if you have, I believe, a calendar, I think it might be now. I'm not certain about that, but moving forward, you won't find Easter as a holiday on the iPhone. How about that? Then again, heartfelt love. Okay, we were there. Okay. Yes. Let me just start over. Sorry, I got it. Then again, heartfelt love is a rare commodity amid the corruption of South Florida. Broward County, scene of the Parkland school massacre, is known for its Fort Lauderdale casual flings during college days on Easter weekend. Can anyone recall what that holy day stands for? And is located between Palm Beach, pedophile capital of the Sunshine States, and the Miami-Dade transshipment hub for cocaine and DACA prostitution. All right, you see where we're going here? We're going down a rabbit hole. Put your helmet on and turn that flashlight on the. Put your mining helmet on. Turn the light on the mining helmet. Here we go. We're going down. Welcome to Little Israel, where underage youths are traded on the slave block. and drugs are more available than a cup of coffee thanks to the quality of law enforcement, which has been thoroughly penetrated by a secretive Jewish vigilante group known as the Shomrim. Ever wonder why director Michael Mann, a proud Jewish American as opposed to a fanatic Zionist thug, is permanently banned by the television industry from making a contemporary sequel to Miami Vice, Crockett and Tubbs? Where were you on V-Day when those high school kids needed your gunnery? Now that the tragedy is being hijacked by Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz for gun control legislation, her supporters and organized crime may soon have a monopoly over firepower. That's a really important thing to understand, okay? Instead of rolling over and playing dead, Americans need to expose and fight the political criminals who are causing the violence against children. 100% true. This is not a time to roll over. This is not a time to say, boo-hoo, poor fucking us. You got to roll up your sleeves on this thing. You're going to figure out what's going on, and you got to get there fast. Okay? Little Israel. What's in a name? The world knows him as Nicholas Cruz, which is the Hispanic surname of his adoptive parents. His biological mother was Jewish, making him a member of the tribe. Another sign of a Khazar Ashkenazi bloodline is his red hair, closely cropped on sides, with a step cut modeled after that Jewish gang of television series fame known as Peaky Blinders. That's why he's still alive and not suicided like Adam Lanza in Newtown, Connecticut. Now, I disagree with him on Adam Lanza. That's an asterisk for me. Nick Cruz fits into the demographic profile of Parkland in Broward County. The Little Israel of the Southeast region, where the chosen people number 150,000, although their population is declining with the die-off of retirees who flock to the Sunshine State, to the Sunshine and Racetracks promoted by mob boss Meyer Lansky, godfather of the South Florida real estate boom. The Lansky heritage of Jewish financial political power is still reflected in the tenacious Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who is running for re-election in the November midterms, despite the onus of suspicion on her for the deaths of DNC staffer Seth Rich and attorney Sean Lucas. This is true. Say again, what's in a name? How about Sheriff Scott Israel? That gem of a surname says it all about Broward County law enforcement, which is in charge of student safety in the school system, including the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High on that fateful day. Every sheriff must take an oath of office. I do solemnly swear I will support, protect, and defend the Constitution to govern the United States and the state of Florida, that I am duly qualified to hold office under the Constitution of the state, and I will well and faithfully perform the duties of Broward County Sheriff, from which I am now about to enter, so help me God. Therefore, if he fails to tell the truth, and nothing but the truth, and instead gets involved in covering up a felonious crime, he's not only betraying the public trust, but also his moral obligation to a higher authority, which we shall hold him to here. Now for the truth test. Sheriff Israel and County School Superintendent Robert Runcie, an African American, claimed that the sole Parkland school security officer, who was one of Israel's deputies, was somewhere else on campus, and therefore could not respond to the shooting. The sequence of events tell another story. When the shooting started, one of the teachers hit the button for code red, buzzed to every staff member's cell phone, including and especially the security agent, School Resource Officer SRO Scott Peterson. Yeah, I'm not making that up. Scott Peterson, who has worked at Parkland School since 2009. To counter the lockdown of classroom doors, 3 separate fire alarms were triggered by the assailants in different buildings. There were loud old-style bells with ringing that could be heard a long distance. After 6 minutes of gunfire, students had escaped into the outdoor areas or by the street. Still, no SRO officer showed up, and the first responders were slow to arrive, enabling the shooters to flee the scene. As quoted in the Daily Fort Lauderdale Sun-Sentinel, a top school administrator citing teacher accounts said about SRO Peterson's absence on premises, "I could have been told by a couple of sources that the SRO was either called off campus responding to something happening, or it could have been his day off," adding that a thorough investigation is needed as to his non-appearance. So this guy who's hired, he's one of Scott Israel's deputies, did not show up. He wasn't there. He was conveniently some other place, and they don't know where. They're going to have an investigation into where he went. Valentine's Day, which often witnesses fights between boys over a girl's attention, is never a day off for school guards. Deputy Peterson is under the direct command of the Broward County Sheriff's Department, which has 6,000 employees under a $730 million annual budget, being the biggest sheriff's office in the entire USA. How about that? Scott Israel presides over the largest sheriff's office in the country. The only authority that can remove him from campus on a potentially volatile day is the office of the sheriff. So Scott Israel is the sole guy who could tell Scott Peterson where to go. Therefore, contrary to speculation, at a lot of alt news sites, there was no drill that morning, or else SRO Peterson would have been on campus. Okay, there was a fire drill. That we know. I believe Shimatsu is off there. There was a code red, but it was the real thing and not part of an exercise. Now remember, they had also been drilling in January. They've been having a number of drills there. Just remember that. Okay, so these kids being trained to be part of drills. This is what happens. Okay. Let me go back here. There was a code red, but it was the real thing and not part of an exercise. Students in non-assaulted classrooms may have confused the code red as a drill. The teachers could have been following a pre-assigned plan not to alarm their students, and the alt media should take the time to read the local newspapers, especially the Sun Sentinel, which usually gets the facts right before a full-on cover-up comes down. There are certainly many grounds for suspicion in this case, as in similar events in the past, so being fact-based and logical are important to figure out the sequence of events and the more complex issues involved in motives. Okay. So far, no security camera videos have been released showing the chief suspect Cruz making his getaway by blending into the panicked crowd as assumed but not yet proven. There is no video. In an age where security and video is big business, you would think that the school would have video, and I'm sure they do, but we're not going to see it. And the alt media should take the time. Okay, we got that going. There are certainly many grounds for suspicion in this case, as in similar events in the past. So, being fact-based and logical, important to figure. Okay, so far, no security videos, no security camera videos have been released showing the chief suspect Cruz making his getaway and blending into the panicked crowd as assumed but not yet proven. No student or teacher has made a positive identification by facial recognition, which is not easy when bullets are flying. And remember, he was supposed to be wearing a gas mask. That's the other thing. There is still a possibility that Cruz is a patsy, and that the job was done, as in the Sandy Hook attack, by professional gunmen or law enforcement officers. The Broward police arrested him 1 hour later after he walked across the street to Walmart's to buy a soda from Subway and then on to McDonald's, where he sat to eat a burger and fries. The geography of Parkland on the northwest corner of Broward shows that in a span of 20 minutes, the suspect could have alternately walked across the county line into either Hendry or Palm Beach counties. There, he could have hidden in the dense foliage and the maze of canals until nightfall to make his escape. Instead, he orders a Big Mac to quell his appetite after shooting at dozens of victims. Then the police force him down onto the grass for the arrest photo. This appears to be stage theater, virtual reality, not the facts. Police officers reported Cruz saying that voices in his head told him to do the shooting. This telltale sign of an MK Ultra victim has similarities to another shooting incident in Israel's Bailiwick. On January 6, 2017, a gunman walked toward the baggage claim carousels at the Fort Lauderdale Hollywood Airport and shot 6 people dead with a Walther PPK pistol. The assailant, a National Guardsman named Esteban Santiago Ruiz, had visited the FBI field office in Anchorage, Alaska, where he was stationed to complain that the U.S. government was controlling his mind and making him watch videos by the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, and that the CIA was forcing him to join the group. Well, Mr. Obama, that shows why so many foreign fighters from Western countries joined the terrorist outfit created by your agency. The coincidence of the two shooting incidents, if either or both are actually false flag operations, would indicate that the Broward Sheriff's Office can be depended on to clean up after the CIA and its partner in crime, the Democratic Party, whose former chief, the most reviled, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, is up for election in November during the midterms. In 2008, in the 2008 sheriff's election, Republican strategist Roger Stone described candidate Scott Israel, then head of the SWAT team that conducted illegal busts in the black community, as an unqualified punk, a racist, and a thief. Those are Roger Stone's words. Thanks much for that character witness testimony, which confirms our own findings. Roger and out. Younger people have never seen video clips of Florida SWAT from those good old days in the 1980s, when back walls of low-end family homes were blown open with explosives and cops charged inside firing. If evidence could not be found during a raid, the cops planted on the suspects bags of crack, which were produced inside a lab at the Broward County Sheriff's Office. Most of the confiscated evidence money from drug raids disappeared down a black hole. A local SWAT commander had the duty to the force, if not God, to put a scrubbed handgun down next to the still quivering body of another dead Schwarze. That's the Yiddish variation on the N-word, derived from German Schwarzen for black. The good riddance attacks explain why so many episodes of Miami Vice featured Sonny Crockett and Rico Tubbs going after thieving punks in the police force. Video cassettes of the Vice series should be mandatory history classes and citizenship seminars for DACA youths. Scott Israel is something worse than your average crooked Miami-style cop due to his being honored as Man of the Year by Shomrim, the law-defined ultra-Orthodox Jewish vigilante group, protects pedophiles, covers up crimes by Zionists, infiltrates police departments, and trains recruits for murderous attacks by Israeli settlers against unarmed Palestinians. These moral men also organize modesty patrols to make sure Jewish women are properly attired, much like their counterparts in Salafist Islam, except that is happening in Brooklyn, Baltimore, and Miami. The Shomrim chapter in South Florida was founded by in Miami by a rabbi in the Coast Guard. Go figure. The USCG is tasked with pursuing and arresting drug traffickers and people smugglers. Of course, little Haitian DACA girls are a major commodity in the nightclubs and the escort circuit. As for cocaine, the Orthodox Jewish rabbis of Miami have been fervently converted the Marano community of Medellin, Colombia, back to the fold, and sending them on to Israel for further indoctrination. For the next major shipment of coke, dope dealers need to search no further than the local synagogue. Okay, this is heavy stuff, man. This is where Yuichi Shimatsu is going with this. It would be a spectacular start of a new Vice series to see Sheriff Israel blow out the back wall and make off with the dope in the Silverman Morris and toss a Saturday night special down on the top of the rabbi. Never mind the Holocaust sob story here. Is a diamond hard fact. 1938, New York Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia appointed Shomrim boss Max Finkelstein to provide bodyguards for visiting Nazi officials and protect the consulate of Hitler-run Germany. So, my American Jewish friends, it's high time to wake up to what these pedophile thugs have really been about. As Roger Stone put it so nicely, instead of wasting interfaith tolerance on Debbie's gang of hypocrites, here's the skivvy on Shomrim. It translates as watchers, or more technically, as protection, as in rackets. The Haredi vigilante group, renowned for making citizens' arrests involving brutal beatings of little black boys suspected of petty crimes, for example, stealing cartons of milk for survival of their younger siblings. As for Miranda writes, if they run into a Latino boy, they'll beat him to a pulp too. It's so amusing to watch someone like Senator Chuck Schumer preach interracial tolerance. Let's see what we have here. So let's turn back to Parkland, where the alleged shooter's brother, Zachary, was quickly hauled off to a psychiatric center for the legal limit of 12 hours, apparently for a massive mind-altering dosage. Oddly, there has been zero mention of younger brother Zach ever having attended Parkland School. News reports suggest that he's the younger brother, although Nicholas was adopted immediately at birth from the Jewish mother by the Cruz couple. This means the brothers are unrelated by blood. So there's no genetic factor behind the duo's mental issues. The water is already being muddied by dubious claims in the social media. Nicholas Cruz is portrayed as a troubled loner, as in the case of all such shooters. Yet one of his classmates claimed to be his girlfriend, who dropped him for an African-American rival, provoking his enraged reaction. This sounds like another "I was bonked by Charlie Manson" claim to fame. If so, why didn't an angry Cruz wait outside school on Valentine's Day to gun them down instead of whacking 17 unrelated students and teachers? Everyone is trying to get their 15 minutes of fame off of Crazy Nick. Following stepmother Linda Cruz's death in late 2017, which happened some 3 months prior to the shooting, the boys were invited to stay at the home of a family friend, the Sneeds, who are not officially registered as foster parents. The wife famously said, "We had a monster living under our roof and we didn't know." That brutal attempt to disassociate speaks for itself. What if he's innocent? The so-called confession means absolutely nothing given the heinous criminal record of the South Florida police for frame-ups of innocent suspects. Perhaps the couple knew all about the $800,000 inheritance the boys are entitled to receive from the sale of the Cruz family properties once the estate lawyers complete the paperwork. There you go, $800,000 connected to Nicholas Cruz. A war veteran who served with him mentioned that James Sneed, who runs an air conditioning repair service in Coral Springs, served as a military intelligence asset, meaning there could be an underlying connection to the nexus. Nicholas was expelled from school apparently early in the first semester of 2017-2018 school year. Parkland School is unwilling to release the records showing grounds for expulsion and whether he was committed to psychiatric treatment. Classmates say he went away during those months. His flare-ups of violence, throwing eggs at cars, for instance, apparently occurred earlier. Drugs alone could have exacerbated his antisocial attitudes, but with midterm elections on the horizon, the Democratic Party is desperately in need of the gun control issue to prevent its wipeout by the Republicans. Now remember, this has not only gone right to the top of the headlines, right to the top of the talking points, right to the top of the 24/7 news crawl, but it also buried what had been taking place with the FBI, with the CIA, with the dossier and the FISA memo. That stuff is buried now, and it's not getting any oxygen at all. Just remember that, okay? The odds are therefore on a planned attack for political objectives, meaning Nicholas Jesus Cruz was set up all along as a patsy. The fact that the brother, who is genetically dissimilar, also has severe mental issues suggests a common or similar social cause for their psychological disorders. In the context of pedophile center Florida, the probable cause is pedophilia, possibly related to that region's booming child porn industry. That would explain the sensitivity of the school report, since photos of the students indicate a disproportionate number of girls with heavy makeup and freaks, kids with a perverse bent in fashion. Something is rotten in Broward besides Debbie Wasserman Schultz, although they're probably linked at a financial level. What I suspect is that Nicholas Cruz's previous run-ins with the police got him into the radar of Parkland's ultra-Orthodox pedophile circle. Okay. His assignment to the Sneeds may have been by school administrators trying to keep him out of the clutches of known pedophiles. Perhaps Nicholas resented the fact that he was the golden boy to the Orthodox cult members and then being taken away on orders from the school. The only way to begin to solve this case is to prevent Nicholas Jesus Cruz and adopted brother Zachary from being silenced by the murderous politicians in Florida. The youths need to be moved under a federal witness program to another distant state for debriefing in detail and allowed enough space and comfort to provide honest answers. The pattern of the shooting suggests at least 2 gunmen were involved, as indicated by some witnesses. 7 students were shot inside Building 12, most of them on the 3rd floor, before going down the stairwell to shoot others outside. But that would only be half of the gunshot victims. 3 separate fire alarms were triggered in different locations. All this happened in the span of 6 minutes, meaning the Parkland school attack appears to be yet another false flag incident done by a team of professional gunmen, which gets back to the earlier issue of why was Deputy Peterson called away on that afternoon. Sheriff Israel also claims that Cruz confessed to entering the school after 2 p.m. and hiding in a service closet for 2 hours. Presumably, the lunch hour is over by 1:30 p.m. when the only entrance is locked electronically and security cameras and motion detectors would spot an intruder. The much likelier scenario is that the gunman had access codes and may have entered and exited the campus through another route with the aid of Deputy Peterson and the Sheriff's Department under orders from higher ups And I don't know where he makes this connection. For someone like, for example, someone like Eric Holder. So he's essentially insinuating that Eric Holder was involved here. So there's a lot more other stuff here. There's MK Ultra info. He talks about Catcher in the Rye, and J.D. Salinger, and Adam Lanza, who again I don't believe actually exists. This is where I disagree with him. But something significant is happening and happened in Parkland, in Broward County, and it has to do with, in my estimation, the law enforcement there. Okay, bottom line in the story, there's something crooked, there's something dark going on in Broward County. And for me, what I'm getting, or what I'm picking up, is that this is connected. This is connected to the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. Now, in March, on March 8th, that it'll be the 101st anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution. So 100 is an interesting number, right? But 101 is perhaps even more interesting, because now we're getting into 11. We're getting into the Twin Towers symbolism. We're getting into Gemini again. Duality, timelines, forks, splits. Those kinds of very interesting pieces of subject matter. And I would say that the 101st anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution might even be more numerologically and symbolically important than the 100th anniversary of that event. Now remember, we've got Mars coming up in Aquarius, and it's going to be in Aquarius, set in Capricorn Aquarius from the end of March to the beginning of October. It's a long time for Mars to be in two signs, and what is that? Almost 6 months, right? But 7 months. And we're going to go Mars retrograde in Aquarius. That'll be a very interesting time. Very, very interesting time as we go backwards with Mars-like issues. And maybe, just maybe, during the Mars retrograde, we might be able to uncover some of this material. Now, look, I know that some of the information I'm presenting you is edgy, and it may push some of your buttons on certain levels, okay? And I'm sorry if I have to be the messenger with it. But we have to look at these things, and we have to uncover them. And the reason why is because the country and the world here is at stake. I mean, this is a big event. What happened in Florida is a huge event. It is a game changer. It is a turning point. It is a pivot. It is a pivot. And to allow the people, and again, I'm getting out on a limb here, to allow the people who did this and who are now promoting it and using children to promote their agenda, these people need to be stopped. And they need to be stopped fast. And if you don't understand that, if you can't figure it out, then you are still asleep. Okay, I'm sorry. Now I'm going to get into some controversial language here. What Yuichi Shimatsu is basically saying, that this is an inside job that is done by Jewish people, Jewish community, right? A gang. That's what he's saying. He's got facts, he's got names, okay? Does that impugn every Jewish person? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So this is not a blanket statement, and please, you must understand this. It is not a blanket statement, and it is not a blanket admonition on my part. But you also have to understand that there are gangs of all stripes. We talk about MS-13, that's a gang. We talk about the Cosa Nostra, and the Mafia. Well, that's a gang. Politics is a gang. Politicians are gang members wearing suits and ties. We talk about the Chinese Triad and the Yellow Claw and all the other gangs that are related to one another throughout the world. We talk about the Mexican drug cartels, gang related. Gangs are gangs. They're all over the place. They are all over the place, and they occupy every strata in almost every cultural group in the world. I bet you dig deep enough, you'll find Christian gangs for that matter. I have no doubt. Okay, so let's be clear. Let's be clear. Gangs have been around for a very long time, and they will surface whenever people get together and decide that they are going to consecrate power, and in most cases outside the laws and the lines of civil behavior and whatever the laws of the land dictate. This is how gangs operate. And what Yuichi Shimatsu is basically breaking down is a gang. Okay? It's a gang. So there are two things. Number one, the information does not impugn everybody from that group. Let's be clear on that. It does not impugn everybody from that group. And number two, gangs are ubiquitous. Once you understand that, then you can look at the material in a way where it's not as charged. And this is a really important thing to do. Because what happens with us is we've been so programmed that when we get really close to something, we're afraid of being exposed and called a racist or a homophobe or an anti-Semite. These are the things that keep us from being able to engage with truth. And if anybody has any kind of investment in truth, you're going to have to cross over those barriers in your head and in your heart. And in order to do so, you have to be incredibly fair. You have to be incredibly fair. And any kind of bigotry or hidden specks of racism, and we all have it inside of ourselves. Come on, nobody's perfect. They got to be looked at. You've got to get down into it, right? That's an important piece here. You can't have one without the other. And then when you distill it out and you just look at, well, these are people that are engaged in acts of power with the idea that they want to consecrate more power, then it begins to look very different. And in many ways, it's the secularization of that process. Okay? We don't want to homogenize it to the point where it has no meaning at all. But these are things we need to wrap our heads around. So that said, there's something going on in Florida right now that is really big. And I'm connecting it and linking it up to the Bolsheviks. And what the Bolsheviks are going to try to do is they're going to try to take away the firearms. They're going to try to take away anything that resembles the ability to fight back, the AR, which clearly Scott Israel jumped right out and said that that was the weapon of choice here. So the first step is you got to get clear. You got to get clear in the fact that we got to pay attention to this. We got to pay attention, and then once you flip that switch, right, then you've got people around you who are going to promote the narrative that's being driven, and the emotion and the emotionality, the emotional signal that's being played. And you have to watch it. You're going to have to watch it. You're going to have to witness it, but you don't have to agree with it. You certainly don't have to agree with it. And once you get clear, then it's really important to share information with people who are open or even partially open. Now, we know for a fact that there is a mechanism that we have inside of us. And that mechanism allows us to be able to have free discourse with one another. Okay? It's an important mechanism to understand. And you'll know when you're able to do it, because you'll be able to speak freely with another. You'll be able to speak freely. If you have to dig and really push your words out, then you don't have a clear field between you and another person. You need to pay attention to that. And you may want to hold back and listen. more than talk during moments like that. Okay? Personally, I mean, I think that people should descend on Parkland. I really feel like at some point we're going to have a crusade for truth here. At some point, people are just going to have to show up en masse at a certain place. And they're going to have to go in, and they're going to, I mean, literally, you know, thousands of people. Like, because this is what it is going to take. You know, you're going to have to go down there, and you're going to have to, you know, basically force Scott Israel to answer a bunch of questions. Really hard questions. Very hard questions. And see what happens. You know, go occupy Debbie Wasserman Schultz's office down there. She might not even be there. She's probably not even there. You know, go find somebody like Alexa Meetnick. Where is she? Get her back on camera. I mean, this is the type of stuff that I think is going to need to take place. Or else what's going to happen is that we're just going to be steamrolled. And the next thing you know, we're going to, you know, these rights that we have held. These are, you know, again, if you're a constitutionalist, these are God-given rights. It's not the government that gives us the rights. These are our God-given inalienable rights. And if this is going to continue, we're just going to roll over, because we're going to play nice. We're not going to want to offend anybody. We're going to want to get along, and we're going to just slip into groupthink. And it is one of the most dangerous places we can be. And I know I've shared with you some controversial material this morning. And for some of you, it might be difficult to listen to. But it's important that we begin to venture into these areas with a clear understanding. Again, not everybody who is associated with a certain group supports that group or is connected to that activity. That's number one. And number two, it's important to understand that criminal and gang-related activity is aided and abetted throughout the entire planet. And not one group has a stranglehold on it. And in many cases, they might actually be working together. Those two things alone are very important pieces to understand and to hold in your consciousness. And then you can go into this with a much clearer and more objective, less charged point of view. But if we're really serious about this shit, and I feel like we should be, because this is kind of a big deal. If we're really serious, we have to pull back the covers on some of this stuff. And at some point, we're going to have to get off the couch. We're going to have to get off the sidelines, and we're going to have to make our presence felt. And it may be really uncomfortable, and people may have a sense of, you know, real outrage and scorn. But I'm telling you, if it doesn't happen, then we're looking at a future that, in my estimation, is hardcore button-down fascism. And it's coming. It's coming unless we can actually address it. First, you got to address it with yourself. Address the fascist, tyrannical dictator within. That's why I have to do that all the time. And it's like, wow, it's not an easy thing to do. Emotional beings, right? Get pissed off. You do that. You take on the tyrannical dictator from within, and it gets a lot easier once you stare that monster down. All right, we got 2 comments here in the section. I'm going to have to get used to our new time. This is Judy. Wise advice about holding back when there isn't a. She didn't complete her thought there. Holding back when there's no. If you don't have, this is a really important thing to remember. Again, if you don't like what I'm talking about today, put all that aside, but listen to this. If you don't have a clear ability to speak to another person, if the words are difficult, do not force them. It is a clear sign that you do not have an open channel of communication. Okay? And it's better to listen then. All right. We'll be back 24 hours from today, the new 8 o'clock time, which I like. Now I can go off and do my work. All right. Oh, we didn't do the time tunnel today. You want to take a little trip back in time? Let's do that. Let's get out of it. I wonder if I could add an effect here. I'm gonna try the effect next time. But for now, I'm just gonna take a little trip down memory lane and take you back a few hundred years. Right, let's go back to how far do we want to start here? How about 1792? 1792, the Postal Service Act establishing the United States Post Office Department is signed by United States President George Washington. So today, it's kind of like the post office's birthday. If you see a mailman or mail lady out there, wish them happy birthday. I'll probably go, what the hell are you talking about? Let's see, what else do we have? 1846. Polish insurgents lead an uprising in Krakow to incite a fight for national independence. In 1877, Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake receives its premiere at the Bolshoi Theater in Moscow. In 1872, we're going to go back about 5 years, the Metropolitan Museum of Art opens in New York City. How about that? The Metropolitan Museum of Art has been around since 1872. In 1901, the legislature of Hawaii Territory convenes for the very first time. In 1909, publication of the Futurist Manifesto in the French journal Le Figaro. How about that? The Futurist Manifesto. The Futurist Manifesto was written by the Italian poet Filippo Tommaso Marinetti. Published in 1909, Marinetti expresses an artistic philosophy, futurism, that was a rejection of the past and a celebration of speed, machinery, violence, youth, and industry. It also advocated the modernization and cultural rejuvenation of Italy. In short, it's a forerunner of fascism. The manifesto was published well before the occurrence of any 20th century events, which are commonly suggested as a potential meaning of this text. Many of them cannot even be imagined yet. For example, the Russian Revolution of 1917, were the first successfully maintained revolution of the sort described by Article 11. Yeah, there's Article 11 inside the Futurist Manifesto. The series of a smaller scale peasant uprisings that had been known as the Russian Revolution previous to the occurrences of 1917 took place in the years immediately before the manifesto's publication and instigated the Duma's creation of a Russian constitution in 1906. The effect of the manifesto is even more evident in the Italian version. Not one of the words used is casual. If not the precise form, at least the roots of these words recall those more frequently used during the Middle Ages, particularly during the Rinascimento. The founding manifesto did not contain a positive artistic program, which the futurists attempted to create in their subsequent technical manifesto of futurist painting. This committed them to a universal dynamism, which is to be directly represented in painting. Objects and reality were not separate from one another or from their surroundings. The 16 people rolling around you in a motor bus are in turn and at the same time 1, 10, 4, 3. They are motionless and they change places. The motor bus rushes into the houses, which it passes, and in their turn the houses throw themselves upon the motor bus and are blended with it. Oh boy. Oh boy. Maybe we'll do the we'll do some readings from the Futurist Manifesto. Maybe we'll get into that with Steve on Friday. Let's see what else. Oh, today, 1931, Congress of the United States approves the construction of the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge by the state of California. In 1933, Congress of the United States proposes the 21st Amendment to the United States Constitution that will end prohibition in the United States. In 1933, Adolf Hitler secretly meets with German industrialists to arrange for financing the Nazi Party's upcoming election campaign. In 1943, the Saturday Evening Post publishes the first of Norman Rockwell's Four Freedoms in support of the United States President Franklin Roosevelt's 1941 State of the Union Address, theme of Four Freedoms. How about that? Let's see what else. 1952, Emmett Ashford becomes the first African-American umpire in organized baseball by being authorized to be a substitute umpire in the Southwestern International League. They couldn't even make the guy like a regular umpire. He had to be a substitute. That sucks. The United States Merchant Marine Academy becomes a permanent service academy. That was back in 1956 on this day. Here's a big one. 1962 Mercury program. While aboard Friendship 7, John Glenn becomes the first American to orbit the Earth, making 3 orbits in 4 hours, 55 minutes. For all you flat earthers out there, maybe it was just a low Earth orbit. Maybe we can just all agree on that. Now, 3 years later, Ranger 5 or Ranger 8 crashes into the moon after a successful mission of photographing possible landing sites for the Apollo program astronauts. In 1971, the EBS here in the U.S. was accidentally activated, an erroneous national alert. Let's see, anything else? Oh, 2003, during the Great White Concert in West Warwick, Rhode Island, the pyrotechnics display sets the station nightclub ablaze, killing 100 and injuring over 200 others. Now, I remember when that happened. That was brutal. Such a lame band. Let's see, what else? Anything else? Well, last year, 6 people were killed, 2 injured, multiple shootings in Kalamazoo County, Michigan. Those things are becoming more ubiquitous. Today is Roy Cohn's birthday. How about that? One of Donald Trump's fixers. Roy Cohn, a year before Sidney Poitier was born. Sidney Poitier is still alive, right? He's born in 1927. He was great in the Blackboard Jungle. He was totally great. Let's see, Ibrahim Ferrer. Oh, he's one of the stars of the movie Buena Vista Social Club. Highly recommend watching that movie. It's a great movie. Today is the birthday of Gloria Vanderbilt. That's Anderson Cooper's mother. Yep, that's right. Today. Let's see, any other interesting birthdays today? Some racers. This is an interesting day for race drivers. Bobby Unser was born in 1935, and Roger Penske was born in 1937. So two racers, two pretty successful racers share the same birthday. For all you hockey fans, today is Phil Esposito's birthday out there. Let's see, anybody else that's interesting? Oh, Ivana Trump. Happy birthday, Ivana Trump. Ivana Trump and Roy Cohn have the same birthday. Isn't that weird? That's kind of crazy. Donald Trump's right-hand man and left-hand woman. Born on the same day. Jennifer O'Neill, one of the most beautiful actresses, I think, of all time. Born in 1948. Today. Randy California. Highly underrated guitar player from a band called Spirit. Died in 1997. I think he was trying to save somebody. Drowned trying to save somebody in the Pacific Ocean. Love Randy California. Love Spirit. Again, very underrated band. Patty Hearst, it's her birthday today. I used to work at Walgreens in Belmont, California. Patty Hearst would come in every now and then. People would be hanging up. Patty Hearst is here. Patty Hearst, she's shopping. Okay. Yeah, I checked her out a couple times. Literally at the checkout stand. I didn't say hello, Miss Hearst. think she was with her bodyguard. And maybe her daughter. I think she had kids. Anyway, Patty Hearst. A little MK Ultra action. Who else? Born today. Oh, Charles Barkley. The Mound. Was it the Mound of Renown? You know who he is. I like Charles Barkley. Happy birthday. One of my favorite singers of all time, born today, Ian Brown from the Stone Roses, and later just Ian Brown. I'll have to listen to some Ian Brown today. Let's see, anybody else? Yes. Let's see. Kurt Cobain. Kurt Cobain and Ian Brown share the same day. That's right. Let's see, anybody else? Miles Teller from, he's an actor, he's not the Penn and Teller guy. Miles Teller, young guy, young actor. I think that's it. Pretty interesting day for birthdays, I'd have to say. Especially the two race car drivers, Penske and Unser, and then Roy Cohn and Ivana Trump. I wonder how they felt about each other. Oh, Jay Giles, American singer-songwriter. He died last year. Today's his birthday. Love me some Jay Giles. All right, let me get out of here. Oh, that was a really nice trip through the time tunnel and going back down memory lane. Okay, you know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real. Your heart, just to open what's possible. Don't let the creeps get you down. Okay? I'm Robert Phoenix. I'll be back 20